Kato had restored his father's kingdom, reclaiming Shewa and uniting Ethiopia under his proud banner. But even as peace settled over the land, a new and formidable threat loomed ominously on the horizon. From across the seas, European powers had turned their gaze to Africa, eager to conquer and colonize its vast and resource-rich lands. Among them were the Italians, who arrogantly set their sights on Ethiopia, believing they could crush the proud nation under the weight of their empire. But Kato, now a seasoned and battle-hardened king, knew that to protect Ethiopia's sovereignty and freedom, he would have to confront the full might of an empire head-on. The battle for Ethiopia's survival, for its very soul, was about to begin.
Fire King, the Italians, they've landed on our shores. They come with ships and soldiers planning to claim our land as their own.
Ethiopia is ours, given to us by our ancestors and guarded by the blood of our people. We have fought too long, too hard for this land. The Italians will not take it from us. They will learn what it means to challenge Ethiopia.
As dawn breaks, casting a golden light over the Ethiopian landscape, Cato's army stands in disciplined rows on the palace training grounds. The clashing of swords and the sound of armor echo through the air, a reflection of their readiness for the battle ahead. Cato's army, once a small band of warriors, has now grown into a formidable force, united by a shared purpose. Veterans who fought beside Kato and new recruits eager to prove themselves stand side by side, determined to defend their homeland. Kato walks among his soldiers, observing the resolve in their faces. He knows that this army represents not just a military force, but a spirit of Ethiopia, a nation that has resisted division and now faces a greater threat from the Italian invaders. Addressing his men, Kato's powerful words remind them that they fight not only for Ethiopia, but for their families, their ancestors, and for all of Africa. His speech ignites their hearts, and the soldiers respond with a thunderous battle cry, "For Ethiopia! For Africa!" The soldiers' unity and determination fill Kato with pride, knowing that the Italians will face an indomitable force defending the freedom of their land.
The Italians think they can take our land, as if Ethiopia were a prize for their greed. But they do not know the strength of our hearts, the depth of our courage. We do not fight just for ourselves. We fight for our families, for our ancestors, and for all of Africa. Let them come. Let them see the might of Ethiopia. We will not bend. We will not break.
The cheers echo across the valley, a sound that carries with it the promise of defiance. Kato walks among his men, offering words of encouragement, his heart swelling with pride. He knows that the Italians will not find an easy conquest here. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. Both armies, one brimming with arrogance, the other with unshakable resolve, moved steadily toward the towering mountains of Adwa, where the fate of Ethiopia would be decided. The Italian forces, clad in polished armor and confident in their supposed superiority, marched with an air of certainty. They believed their vast numbers and advanced weaponry would lead to a swift and effortless victory, viewing Ethiopia as a mere obstacle in their imperial ambitions. But Kato, ever the master tactician, had studied the terrain with precision. The mountains, rugged and imposing, would become his greatest ally. He knew their twists and turns, their hidden valleys and steep cliffs. Every inch of Adwa would serve his strategy. As the Italians advanced, blinded by their overconfidence, they were walking into a trap, a carefully laid plan that would test not only their strength, but their will. For Kato, this was more than just a battle. It was a fight for survival, for Ethiopia's freedom, and for the soul of his people. The mountains would witness a clash that would echo throughout history.
They're getting closer, my king. Shall we engage now?
Hold the line. Let them come closer. We fight on our terms, not theirs. Now show them the might of Ethiopia.
From the hills, the Ethiopian forces surge forward with a thunderous roar. Arrows fly, swords clash, and the battlefield erupts into chaos. Kato rides at the front of his army, leading the charge with unwavering courage. His sword flashes in the sunlight as he cuts through the enemy lines, inspiring his soldiers to fight with relentless determination. The battle is fierce, and blood soaks the earth, but Cato's strategy proves decisive. The Italian forces, caught off guard and overwhelmed, begin to falter. The battle raged fiercely as dust filled the air, obscuring the mountain peaks and creating chaos on the battlefield. Kato fought alongside his men, his presence a symbol of strength and leadership. However, the Italians, well-armed and numerous, began to push back, and for a moment the Ethiopians seemed to falter. Kato, panting from exhaustion, surveyed the battlefield and saw his men struggling. His heart grew heavy with the possibility of defeat. But then, through the swirling dust, Kato spotted a weakness in the Italian lines. A section of their forces had overextended, leaving a gap ripe for exploitation. With a spark of determination, Kato quickly devised a plan. He pointed to the vulnerable spot and commanded his general to order the cavalry to strike. Within moments, the sound of hooves thundered across the battlefield as the cavalry charged into the gap. The Italian forces, caught off guard, were unable to defend their exposed flank. Their formation shattered, and the tide of battle shifted. With newfound strength, Cato's soldiers surged forward, pressing the attack and turning the tide in Ethiopia's favor. Victory now seemed within their grasp. The battle rages on, dust swirling around the combatants, obscuring the view of the mountain peaks. Kato fights alongside his men, his presence like a beacon of strength. But the fighting is brutal. The Italian soldiers, well-armed and numerous, begin to push back, and for a moment, it seems the battle may turn against the Ethiopians. Kato, panting from exertion, surveys the battlefield. He can see his men struggling, and a frown crosses his face. But then he spots something, a weakness in the Italian lines. A section of their forces has overextended, leaving a gap ripe for exploitation.
There, tell the cavalry to strike now. We'll break them from the inside.
The sun begins to set over the battlefield, casting long shadows over the fallen. The dust settles, revealing Cato's army standing victorious amid the wreckage of the Italian forces. The banners of the invaders lie trampled on the ground, and the remaining Italian soldiers, beaten and demoralized, retreat in disarray. Kato, bloodied but unbowed, stands tall amidst the aftermath, his sword still in hand.
We've done it, my king. The Italians are retreating. The day is ours.
This victory is not just ours. It belongs to all of Africa. Let the world know that Ethiopia will never be conquered. Today, we have shown them the strength of a free people.
He raises his sword one final time, and his soldiers cheer, their voices rising in triumph. The Battle of Adwa would go down in history, not just as a victory for Ethiopia, but as a symbol of defiance against colonial powers across Africa. Against all odds, Kato's forces had triumphed at the Battle of Adwa, a victory that would echo not only across the continent but throughout the world. Ethiopia, the only African nation to successfully resist the tide of European colonization, has stood its ground with unwavering defiance. Cato's leadership, combined with the indomitable courage of his people, had proven that Africa was not a land to be easily subdued, but a land of ancient strength, resilience, and unyielding spirit. This victory was more than just a military triumph. It was a symbol of hope for oppressed nations everywhere, a powerful statement that the soul of Africa could not be conquered or broken.